All right. Well, going into our next topic, we haven't yet really talked about the launch of the NVIDIA 50 series cards. We're not going to go into every single detail of what the pricing was and the specs as they were on paper at the time of uh, announcement and all of that, but there have definitely been some big issues with the way that these cards have launched. One of those issues being that in some cases they have actually started fires. Thankfully it seems like it never got to the point of actually setting a house on fire or anything, but starting catching fire in a PC build or melting cables. There's missing ROPs, render output pipelines, or raster operation pipelines, render backends, render output partitions, or just ROPs for short, are fundamental units in every GPU. Think of them as a specialized load/store units that read and write pixel information onto a graphic card's VRAM. They also handle operations such as blending and certain types of anti-aliasing. So, I know that was for the average person, that was just like another language, and I totally understand because I don't even fully understand it myself. But basically, they have left out some of these units, which means that, in short, the games don't run as well as they should because of that. But it's missing things that it's supposed to have as part of how this thing is designed. But it doesn't end there. There's also the issue where these cards do not support what was considered like a major NVIDIA exclusive feature back in, well, really like 15 years or so ago. Something that was an old feature that worked up through the 40 series of cards was NVIDIA Physics. And it basically just additional like graphical effects and that sort of thing that could only be done with the NVIDIA cards. And it's been removed. It's not even an option in the 50 series cards, which means backwards compatibility with older games, at least if you're using PhysX. And I don't think that there's any game where it's like required to use PhysX, but it was an option that just basically took a game to the next level, at least at the time. Those games don't run properly at all. Like, I saw an example of the original Mirror's Edge, which came out in like 2008, was running at single-digit frames per second because of the fact that these cards do not support that feature, which is insane. I mean, like, I remember the first time when I started getting into PC gaming a bit more, and I was trying to play Arkham Asylum on my laptop, which I still have that laptop from 2010. And my laptop had an ATI card because that was before they got purchased by AMD. And I made the mistake of turning on physics and it was running at single digit frames per second until I turned that off. And it's like, okay, yeah, that fixed the problem. But it's very much a situation where it was, I mean, the fact that a modern graphics card cannot support a feature that old is insane. And I won't get too much into my thoughts on the matter. I'll talk more about it a bit later, but basically there's just, I believe there's other issues too with the 50 series. I can't remember offhand if there's anything else other than the fact that the price is ridiculous for what they're getting and all of that. But that being said, I'm sure you have plenty to say on the matter, so I'm gonna let you take it away.
Oh man, I mean, I don't even know if we can really call it a launch, because what launch? I mean, there what cards were there even being sold in the first place? Which also, actually, just as I was getting ready to like set up, I didn't have a chance to forward this to you, but I saw something saying that NVIDIA possibly limited the number of GPUs being sold at launch, or roughly at launch, to make it because of the fact they would sell out. And in fact, today NVIDIA actually had their quarterly earnings reports, and so it would look better if, to say we sold out all of our GPUs, and make the stock shares go up as a result, and then later on GPUs might slowly start being available again, which is pretty scummy if you ask
Yeah.
me, to do something like that just to make your shareholders happy. But I think all in all, the 50 series, at least from launch, has been a complete disaster. Now, the I think it was just the high end. I don't think it was like the mid range cards of like the 40 series. The high end 40 series had some issues here and there of cables burning up as part of the 12 volts power, as opposed to the standard, I think, 8 volts that has been a standard for years. And so those were an issue, and we believe that NVIDIA had addressed the issue and had fixed it. But now it's a common, or at least it's common enough that NVIDIA is addressing it, that different tech YouTubers are testing this out and saying, yeah, this is an issue that is way more common than it should be. That's a problem right there. It's the fact that it got worse than it was the previous generation, which is insane to think about. And this is dangerous stuff. I mean, if your hardware just lights on, it just catches fire, that's a problem. And it's like even worse. Like, say for example, you just have your computer idle, and say you like step away for a while, or if you like leave the house and you come back later on, and as a result, there's a whole fire. That's dangerous stuff. That's not good at all. So I don't know what the issue is, but NVIDIA definitely needs to get on this, because this is a problem, and they should be focusing more on that than worrying about how does selling out of GPUs look to our shareholders and investors. Because let me tell you that, I mean, they probably won't care, but if there's a problem, if there's a huge scandal of fires breaking out, those investors won't be happy later on, though, I'll tell you that much, and they might start selling. But then also the fact that a lot of these units are missing their ROPs and are essentially, you're buying a, since you're simply crippling the GPU, if you're buying a 5090 and you're getting maybe like a 5080, then you're not paying what your money's not going toward what you thought you were getting,
Right.
and you're getting a worse performance, which, I mean, I think that the prices of some of these cards have been ridiculous anyway, but to spend even more and get less than what you initially thought, I think that's even worse. So I don't know what the issue is, and this isn't and again, similar to the cable issues, this isn't just like a one-off case here. This is enough that multiple people who are buying these GPUs are saying, oh man, I'm missing stuff. Like, I'm not getting the performance I should be getting because the card's missing what it should have. So like this is a complete disaster, and I mean, part of it might just be NVIDIA being very cocky, being on top of the GPU market, which
Mhm.
is very sad to say. But it's really messed up. I mean, granted, NVIDIA has, at least they've been shifting their focus away from gamers for quite a while. I mean, go back to the 30 series. That was when they started to shift their focus by turning toward crypto miners. They started to focus on like, hey, you can use our GPUs to mine Bitcoin, all your other crypto and stuff like that. And I mean, and they were even caught later on deliberately selling GPUs to miners. Like especially like during the shortage, and especially because there was, the big shortage because of COVID and stuff, and so you couldn't have chips being made and stuff being manufactured and shipped out. On top of those issues, they deliberately were withholding GPUs to not sell to gamers. They were caught later on and fined because of that. And and then after all the crypto craze kind of died down, they said, oh, well, now we've got AI, so let's focus on selling to AI. And so that's been their more thing they've been shifting toward. And gamers again are being left out in the dust as a result. And you would hope that this would help spur AMD to try to seize the day, but I'm not gonna hold my breath on that, because I mean the 9070 is supposed to, the 9070 97X, I mean, for one thing, also AMD has said they're not focusing on high tier cars anymore, so they're pretty much now just doing mid-range and below as of right now. But I mean, if they blow this opportunity, because NVIDIA set them up, like all AMD needs to do is just sell a good GPU and make sure that it's reasonably priced. Like, that's all they have to do right now. If they can do that, also make sure they have enough units. I would also add that as well.
Right.
If they can do that, they could really seize a good, I mean, it's not gonna be incredible or anything like that, but they can get enough of a market share where people might consider buying AMD. Because I mean, they were able to do it with CPUs. Now, granted, also in that situation, that was their fault, but Intel was dominating the CPU market, and AMD, their CPUs sucked for a long time, or at least they were, at best they were decent, but it wasn't until Ryzen came along that they actually had something that was good. And then once Intel slipped a little bit, they got their foot in the door, and then they sort of like flipped the tables on Intel, and that's sort of like they're very, I mean, Intel got back in the game, so it's a very competitive market where neither really can outpace the other, but that's a good thing for consumers because you have those choices. With the GPU side, though, NVIDIA is pretty much on top. Like, people are only going primarily to NVIDIA, and I mean, I know that like AMD also had their issues like with GPUs as well, but I mean, they've gotten better. But people are more so on NVIDIA, so like no one's really caring too much about like how the cards are doing. So like they really actually need to take this moment to do what they can. And I mean, Intel, I've heard their GPUs are decent, especially once they've actually fixed with driver compatibility with older games. But the problem I think Intel has right now is just the fact that there are no GPUs to buy like anywhere. Which I mean, I've looked and there's like, they're just all out of stock everywhere, unless you want to go and buy one from a third-hand reseller who's charging, twice as much as it originally was. But yeah, like NVIDIA, it's just a nightmare right now with what NVIDIA is doing, and I'm disappointed to see people who have consistently been buying GPUs generation after generation of high-end ones at that, and like especially now when you buy one, you're really getting, hopefully just metaphorically, burned in the process. Because I mean, I've seen people who bought a 3090, then they bought a 4090, and and they most likely are going to buy a 5090, and I'm just like, why are you dropping like $15,000 to $2,000 on a GPU every generation when like the one you had before was very capable and would have lasted you a long time? Like, and now if you bought one, you're probably getting one that's underperforming or is just a hazard in general. So it's like, no, don't do that. But yeah, that, I guess that's essentially everything I have to say about this whole fiasco. Shame on NVIDIA.
Yeah. I mean, we will say a lot of negative things. I mean, like, it seems like probably seems like some people that we pick more on consoles than we do on PCs, and in general, yeah, I'd say that's probably a little more accurate. But NVIDIA just is not doing themselves any favors, and for the brief period of time, very early after the original announcement, that I halfway considered the idea of buying a 50 series card, because I haven't upgraded. I mean, the last time I upgraded was in 2019, and that was a 2018 card that I upgraded to. You know, I'm not doing it at all now with the 50 series. I'm definitely back to the point where if I upgrade sometime in the not too distant future, it's going to be an AMD card. And even if it's just a, you know, mid-level or whatever, it'll probably still be an upgrade over what I have right now. But something that I didn't mention before about these cards that I also really strongly dislike. You know, last gen they introduced frame generation. This generation, or 50 series, is multi-frame generation, so you can get up to 3 fake frames per real frame. So it looks like you're getting a lot more frames per second, but your latency is also is also increased by 3 times, because it's, you know, three fake frames for every 1 real frame. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Frame generation is not good. Frame generation is terrible. It only adds latency. Now, some examples, it's not as bad as others. Like when I used it on Horizon Forbidden West, the little bit that I tried it out with FSR3's frame generation, it wasn't bad. Same with Ghost of Tsushima. It wasn't bad, but there was just enough latency to where when I turned it off, the game felt better in both situations. And of course on the Steam Deck, it's like it didn't improve the frame rate that much, and it added a buttload of latency to where it was just like, I cannot play this way. This is terrible. The thing is that NVIDIA is not actually doing a drastic difference in performance. It's supposed to be a bump in performance each time around. This time, instead of having actual real performance boosts with this graphics card series, they're giving you fake performance boosts. And I don't like it. And I will not purchase one of those cards because of that. Now, I realize that, yes, frame generation is still something that is optional. But for the amount of money they're charging, there needs to be significant performance increases. It cannot be just AI-generated fake frames as your performance increases. That's not good enough. Especially not when you're charging $2,000 for your top-of-the-end card. And that's only if sellers actually stick to MSRP, which that's a whole nother issue that's been coming up with them not selling anywhere near MSRP. And I'm irritated because, like, I've been considering sometime soon doing an upgrade for my PC. Just because it's like, you know, it's been 6 years. It wouldn't hurt for me to do an upgrade, and it's not necessarily like I've been unsatisfied with my performance overall, even if I would love to just see a 120 frames per second across the board. But when I look at what NVIDIA especially is doing, it just makes me more and more want to stick with the build I already have and not even bother with upgrading. And I mean, of course, it doesn't help that when I think about upgrading, if I actually go with a newer graphics card, like something that would be around the 40 series or better, I'm probably going to have to rebuild the entire thing, because I'm probably going to need new motherboard, new CPU, new RAM in order to be able to do that. And probably realistically a new power supply. I've been using the same power supply since 2016. I mean, I never upgraded that because I didn't need to. I had enough power that I had what I needed. But it's like, it'll be expensive to do a build, and at that point, I'm thinking I may just have to like straight up do a like a brand new computer completely, like get a new case, do new everything, and then just move this one to like being the TV, the living room PC or something to use on the TV. And but then of course I have to move everything over, and I don't know, like the only thing I could think to do potentially with that would be taking all of like keeping the like getting a smaller case just to move over my motherboard with all the parts connected to that, minus maybe the hard drives, to a new case, and then keep all the hard drives in this build. I mean, in the new build, and just get like a one single hard drive specifically for the new bit, or for the what would become a living room PC. But I don't know. I have a hard time with all of that. Yeah, I guess I technically could just sell the PC even. That would be an option as well, but I don't know. I'm not anywhere near the point where like I really truly want to upgrade right now, because it's just going to be way too expensive and I don't need it. I'm not at a point where I actually need to upgrade my PC. It's just, it's how it goes sometimes. Sometimes it's just like, but I could have better performance. Like, it wouldn't hurt. And maybe going with kind of a clean slate would make it a little bit easier to manage my hard drives and everything else, and not have so much bloat on my computer. Because, I mean, I know that really the bloat on my computer is just because I haven't done a good enough job keeping things organized as I go. So it's entirely my fault. But it's still just, anyway. That all being said, I really think that people need to stay away from the 50 series cards as much as humanly possible until everything gets fixed. If NVIDIA is actually going to fix it. Not just the temperature issue, potential fire hazards, which especially want to avoid that, but also all the other things where they're gypping you. They're really not giving you what you're paying for, and it's just not acceptable. There's absolutely no good excuse for this, and it really is just arrogance and greed. That's all it is. This is like back in, when the PS3 launched at $600. It was arrogance and greed. They got too big of a head, and they suffered because of it. I mean, ultimately, they ended up figuring it out, and, they were able to recover from it. And, of course, now PlayStation's best-selling console by far. Or, well, at least between them and Xbox. But, yeah, I hope that AMD doesn't just trip over themselves constantly like they're playing Smash Brothers Brawl. Because that seems to be what they do every time. And yeah, we'll see what happens in the future. I'll definitely keep my eyes peeled, particularly about the new cards from AMD, and find out whether or not they are actually like that raw performance boost that they should have, because I'm not willing to give NVIDIA money for any of their newer cards anymore. Like, I feel like upgrading to something from 30 series wouldn't be enough of an upgrade. 40 series would be more of an upgrade, but also would it be worth the cost, especially because the prices are pretty inflated right now too, with people trying to sell those off. And I'm not going to touch the 50 series at all. So, I don't know. I guess I might just be rocking my 2080 Ti for another 5 years. And just keep using my old computer. And it will get to a point at some point that I won't be able to play the new games anymore. And we'll see where we get with all that. But anyway, I think that's really all I have to say on that matter. You have any other thoughts?
No, nothing else for me. Oh, well, I'll just let just as a announcement, I guess you could say. So AMD is supposed to have their showcase for the 9070 on Friday.
Okay.
So then I think so we should be getting stuff information, especially like the price of the 9070 and the 9070 XT, and also seeing about like performance as well. But granted, based on what the rumors and supposed leaks are, they're relatively around like I think like the 7090 X or 7090 base or 7090 XT, or like the 4080. So if it's under like $600, if it's something like maybe 550, that would be pretty decent for
Yeah.
price to performance. So hopefully
Yeah, for
they
sure.
don't do something stupid like charge 700 for it. Hopefully,
Yeah,
we'll see.
for sure. Yeah, we'll see what happens.